janaka uvāca hantātmajñasya dhīrasya khelato bhogalīlayā nahi saṃsāravāhīkairmūḍhaiḥ saha samānatā. O marvel, the man of understanding, the knower of the self, who plays the sport of life, has no comparison with the deluded beasts of burden of the world. From now on, commentary on many verses flow from the inward contemplation during the Bhivadi days, where he was immersed in Ashtavakra Gita almost throughout the day. Even when he refers back to the bullet points of absorption on each verse during those days, he gets transported instantly to the most sacred life led there. Every day morning would start with his visit to the temple with this sacred treatise in his hands. And he cannot say as contemplation or meditation. Rather, it would be proper to say his existence as each verse. Would start right from the early morning hours from the temple, and then it would be continuing throughout the day. In fact, there were days he would exist in a single verse for more than 3 or 4 days. How beautifully the grihastha was effortlessly aligned with the vanaprastha and sannyasa ashrama. Now for the commentary, which is just an elaboration of the points noted down while in Bhivadi. Throughout the previous chapter, the preceptor Ashtavakra condemned Janaka and accused him, saying that how can a man of wisdom enjoy the role as a king, undertake actions as a king, live a sensuous life with wives in his palace, and carry out various responsibilities as a king. After listening to his master with utmost reverence throughout the previous chapter, Janaka starts with a humble submission to his preceptor. Quote Chinmaya. One second. The behavior of man of perfection in the world outside at his body level should not be compared with those of the ordinary people who drag themselves through life as beasts of burden, carrying the loads of their vasanas, panting in exhaustion, desiring to gaze on sense gratifications here and there along its bridle path. So to these lines, he will just add one more expression. The behavior of the man of perfection. One more expression added here. Playing the sport of life should not be compared with Chinmaya's lines, those of ordinary people who drag themselves through the life as beasts of burden, carrying the loads of their vasanas, filled with desire for sense gratification. Janaka has utmost reverence for his preceptor Ashtavakra. However, at the same time, the spontaneity with which this answer comes from Janaka in this verse is the spontaneity of the inner source, over which even the reverence of Janaka to his guru can have no control. That flow from the inner source knows no fear, no deliberations, no formalities. In fact, it can have no guru, no disciple. No wonder his guru Ashtavakra does not condemn Janaka for these expressions, because even the interesting point is that even while Ashtavakra was loading the expressions of teasing and taunting in the earlier verse, he knew the response which he would get from his able disciple who has already realized self. Let us focus on the additional expression added, sport of life. Sport of life is there in the translation also. It was just added to the Chinmaya's expression in the commentary. Let us see a normal sport played with spirit of competition and desperation for winning. What all happens in such a game, given this background? There is a fierce competition between two sides playing the game. Each side wants to win the game at any cost, puts in the best of its efforts for pursuing and winning the game. Sometimes there may even be foul plots, negative strategies deployed by a team to outclass the other team. At the end, the winning side rejoices, the losing side cries. From here, let us take off to the life of a jiva, a normal jiva. A jiva undertakes all activities in his life with the only aim to succeed and to outclass, dominate others. May it be at his workplace, at home, at society, relative circle, or any other activity which he undertakes. Beasts of burden is referred to such game played by jiva every day where the basis for the objects of desires is his vasanas. The ego propels him to pursue the objects of desire. Can be equated with the unfair practices in the game. The objective is victory in getting the object of his desire, which was the same as the objective in the game, in the sports, which we observe. The impact of such pursuing objects with vasanas and ego is equal to the impact is equal to burden gathered due to the beastly act. What is the beastly act? Acting like an animal, just running after the desired prey, desired object, without using discriminative intellect to decide if it is necessary to pursue such object. This is the beastly burden a jiva carries. Alternatively, beastly burden can also refer to the burden of karma accumulated by jiva due to his beastly acts propelled by his vasanas. It is important to note here that Janaka was ridiculed throughout the previous chapter by his master, where the master pointed out the beastly acts of his disciple, who was pursuing self on one hand and living in palace, sporting with queens, acquiring wealth, undertaking activities at worldly level, etc. The beastly acts. Janaka here appropriately replies to his master, "O master, don't compare my sport of life with the jiva's play, carrying beastly burdens of his acts, or beastly burden of the result of his acts." Chinmaya writes about this sport in his commentary thus: a play cannot be any longer a play if it is played with a purpose to achieve a profit. Sport is a natural explosion of one's inherent energy, free and spontaneous. Play itself is its own fulfillment. Unquote. Now let us visualize two kinds of games. First, imagine an innocent child playing a game. The child engages in sport without any concern about winning or losing. There is no attachment to the play nor aversion to the other child who plays better. For the child, the play is the means as well as the end. It does not play to win. It plays for the joy it derives, or it plays in the joy which is its true nature. Now, the second game let us quickly transport ourselves to Vrindavan, where Gopikas were engaged in the Rasa Leela. If the Gopikas were conscious of their body, if they are conscious that about their sex, that they are sporting with Krishna, a male, then they would be conscious of their moves, they would be conscious of their chunnery, their cloth slipping away. They would be conscious of a man's hand, Krishna's hand, brushing their bosom while the dancing is on, etc. They were conscious of none of the above. They knew only one thing: the joy of having merged in Lord. A Jivan Mukta's actions are exactly like the game played by a child or the Rasa Leela of the Gopikas. He plays the sport of life exactly like a child with no specific purpose. He plays in joy. Each act of a Jivan Mukta is manifestation of his joy, his bliss. And like the Gopikas, he is not conscious of his BMI acting. He also knows only one thing, as observed in the Rasa Leela: the joy of having merged with Lord. Chinmaya said earlier, sport is a natural explosion of one's inherent energy, free and spontaneous. Whereas, if we can even go beyond these expressions of Acharya, a man of wisdom undertaking various actions as a man still in samsara does everything. Not as an explosion of his inherent energy in the sport of his life. Leftover life, leftover prarabdha, and necessary purushartha to carry out the dharma of the leftover samsara action, samsara life. He is just aware that he is in joy. He exists as joy. And in his existence as joy, all the actions somehow mystically get done. To end the talk, Acharya quotes a verse from Annapurna Upanishad. The translation of the verse goes like this: a man who has liberated himself completely from his inner attachments, whose thoughts are ever pure and sweet, he undertakes an action or not, there can never be in his bosom, at any time, under any circumstances, the sense of doership or enjoyership. Beautiful. Hari Om Tat Sat.